I've told the story thousands of times. I'll be 55 in a couple of months. This happened when I was 16, and I still
get goosebumps.
Get goosebumps.
Yeah. Meanwhile, let me pass on the good word about the new
Wonky Times. Hey, Wonky people, it's me, Matt Sterner, and as always, my robotic cohort, the Renaissance man of hard drives and RAM, RoboBrian.
Greetings, humans. I come in peace.
That's good to know.
I've always wanted to say that.
So just before RoboBrian and I sat in front of our microphones here, I was telling him about my conversation with best-selling thriller horror author Scott Wells. And man, that guy is pretty cool.
He sounds cool.
Yeah, he is cool.
Cool.
Scott's new book is called Marked by the Ouija, a young adult horror story full of creepy vibes, friends making pretty bad decisions, and of course a Ouija board.
Classic. Reminds me of Gladys.
Who's Gladys?
Oh, an old flame of mine.
Flame?
Yes, we were very close for many weeks.
Okay, well, what happened between you two?
I knew she was only in it for my popularity and social status.
Okay.
She was later restored to factory settings. She's forgotten all about it.
Anyway, wow, okay. Well, I'm always learning something new about you, Brian, but okay. So I'm trying to set the tone properly for this before we get into my chat with Scott, because it's a pretty good story and I wanted to just do this right. So what did I do? I hired a couple of professional voice actors to give us a dramatic reading of the setup. Pretty neat, right?
I do not get paid, but I support paid human artists. Carry on.
Thanks, buddy. Okay, well, here's what the book is about, featuring a couple of paid actors who have asked to remain anonymous.
When a group of friends stumble upon a brand new Ouija board, a night of harmless fun spirals into a terrifying encounter with the unknown. Spooked by the pleas of restless spirit Peter, they burn the board, which reappears the next day without a trace of the fire.
Haunted by cryptic warnings, unexplainable phenomena, and a message they can't ignore, the thrill seekers find themselves tangled in ghostly vengeance. As the line between the natural and the supernatural blurs, they face a life-altering question. Can they trust the board, or are they unleashing a darkness far beyond their control?
Yeah. It's spooky, it's emotional, it pulls you in like a spirit with really good Wi-Fi.
Just like Gladys. Oh, Gladys.
Pardon me, when will I be paid? I need to hit the road soon.
Yeah, just meet me after the show.
Yeah, I was actually wondering the same thing.
Oh, okay.
My son needs a new pair of sneakers. I could use a new pair as well.
What size shoe do you wear? I just so happen to be in the shoe business too. Is your foot narrow or is it wide?
Oh, that's so nice. What are you doing later? I'm free if you wanted to get a bite to eat.
I'd love that. I'm hungry. I also have an appetite for a little bit of romance.
You're handsome.
Okay, hey, wait, hold on. Okay, I have an interview to toss to you here.
Love is in the air, Matt.
I guess so. But yeah, let's share my chat with Scott Wells first.
Let's do it.
So buckle in, grab some sage, some water, maybe a flashlight, and your favorite caffeinated beverage.
I prefer to drink motor oil.
And I'll get you guys paid soon, I promise.
People are afraid of what they don't understand, and I knew when I wrote this book that it was. I knew that it was going to.
Ruffle some feathers.
Ruffle some feathers is a good way to put it. I didn't. There's a lot of things I didn't realize, but it's all good.
I grew up in Tucson, Arizona.
All right.
There's this McDonald's, and it has a T-Rex out front. And it's like a full, life-size T-Rex. And there was like a religious group in town that would hold signs in front of it saying that dinosaurs aren't real. And so you never know like who you're going to meet in life after you putting out this book. It's like you're going to ruffle someone's feathers, so.
But on the flip side, I've had, and I didn't expect this, I've talked to thousands of people, not only in person at shows, but also over social media from around the world that have shared their experiences with me, their own personal experiences. And, one of the I was going to say one of the things, but I would say the biggest thing that has come out of it is that the people that have had these experiences, they can't talk about it. I mean, these are traumatic experiences. I mean, most of them are still affecting their lives, in some form of, or fashion of that's affected their lives, and not in a good way. And so I was really surprised at how many people have had experiences and that were dealing with it and that didn't have a safe space where they can talk about it or vent. So without even, I mean, it was certainly not intended, I became a safe space where they could actually share their stories. And I lean into that. I'm like, this is great, because the way that I see it, from my experience and from talking to so many other people is, there's the haunting, and most people think a haunting is the ghost in the room, but I think, yes, that's scary. That's freaky. You can't, people are afraid of what they can't understand, and you don't understand that fully. But I think the real haunting comes after that, when people have had these traumatic experiences that they can't talk about. I've talked to people they've been, they're judged. Of course, everyone's judged. They're ridiculed, humiliated, bullied. Some were they were ostracized from their family, and so they're having to keep this inside themselves, and it's just festering and getting worse. And so when I realized that, I thought, I want to be that safe space. I want to be able to give them a chance to talk about it. And in going forward, I wanted the book to be a way to get out that conversation and that dialogue to where people talk about it. So I believe that the more that people talk about it, the less it becomes a taboo subject. It's still something that should be, in my opinion, should be avoided. I've never used it since this one experience, but we all know that that's not going to happen. People are going to use it. Right. So, I believe that everyone has their own right to make their decisions. But if they're going to make that decision, and just as many as I've talked to that have had experience, I was shocked at how many people haven't had an experience that want one. And so what I want to do, and now a new purpose of this book, and there's been a couple of spin-offs from this. I've written a short film, and that short film, the purpose of that is to go into the film festivals, and that will be, so the book would be like stage number 1, stage number 2 would be the short film, and then the stage number 3, the third project that has spawned from this is for about 6 months, my publicist and I have been interviewing other people who have had their own personal traumatic experiences with Ouija boards, and we've basically put that into a TV program, and we're editing now. So, cool. So we've got. Yeah, it's been really exciting. So I've got these 3 areas: the book, the short film, and the TV show. That my ultimate goal is I want more people to talk about it. I think the more you talk about it, the less scary it becomes. But at the same side, I want them to respect it. I want to respect the power that it has.
Take it seriously. Exactly. You want to familiarize it with, but then also like it's not a joke. Like some might think it's not real, or they think it's someone else moving the piece around. And
exactly. And I think the reason that people don't believe, I think a lot of people have had heard the stories. I've heard the stories, and I didn't believe it. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people have heard the stories. Some people that have heard the stories will just like, hey, I don't want to go anywhere near it, which is great. Mm-hmm. But I still think that that we should understand it, And then there's the other people that have heard all the stories, and this category I fell into. You've heard all the stories, and you don't want to believe it. You want to experience yourself, and you're going to do it at any cost.
Right.
And so if you do it, then there are some rules or protocol that you should follow. It's never completely safe. It's always going to be risky. There's no doubt about it. But if they follow these rules, then it will at least protect them in some way. And the reason I say that is because I've in interviewing been interviewing a lot of people for this TV project, and not everyone, which kind of surprised me. Some people have had, I don't say a good experience, I just say a not negative experience. So there are some that have had a not negative experience. And what's interesting about that is every single one of those that I've talked to, that we've interviewed, they have followed those rules and they have not had a bad experience. However, on the flip side, 100% of everyone that has had a bad experience with a Ouija board hasn't followed the rules. And I just find that's pretty telling. I mean, it goes right down the middle. So my publicist and I, we put together a brochure. It's a little 4x4 brochure. It's called the Ouija Safety Guide, and it has these 13 rules in there. So
13, is that like on purpose? Did you make it 13 rules, or did it just come out like that?
It just came out like that. So we basically, I mean, most people know, a few of the rules, like you're never supposed to take your fingers off the planchette. But I would say that the two rules that people, from my experience, from talking to people, that they don't know about, which are two of the biggest rules, are the first, which is the very last rule, which is always close out that session by saying goodbye. Say this session is done, goodbye. So basically, whatever. I don't want to say portal, but whatever connection that you've had, by basically closing that out, that closes that out. 99% of the people don't do that because they don't know that they're supposed to do that.
Is it because they had their experience with it and then they just, okay, I'm closing this up and putting it away? Like, I bet that happens a lot.
Absolutely. That's what happened to me. So I don't know how much you've read about the book,
Well, I was going to ask you, because you wrote the book, but you've had your own experiences, and I was going to ask if you could share a little bit of that.
So this book is my personal experience, and it's obviously I had to fictionalize it by changing the names to protect to protect everyone involved. And there's a part of the book that I can't prove, but I very, very strongly believe happened. So the basic story is I was 16. I was living in a small town in Idaho, a farming town, a conservative town. I was born and raised Mormon. And, for anyone that has lived in a small town, especially when you're teenagers, you have to create your own fun. You've got to go out and find something, toilet paper in and go do whatever. You've got to do something that, or else you're going to go crazy.
Yeah, you didn't have the internet back then. You had to go outside and do something or start a fire on it by accident, or speaking from my own experiences. But
that's a story I want to hear later.
You had to get creative. Yeah.
So exactly, and that's where we were. Well, also at the time, I was a stereotypical teenager. I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew more than my parents. And so I was working at Pizza Hut, and my boss, he was probably, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years older than I was, but he had his own house in town. He'd already graduated high school, or actually he didn't graduate high school, but I had got mad at my mom and dad. We got in an argument, and I'm like, I'm moving out. And my dad was one of those guys. He's like,
go for it. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. He's like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So I moved in with my boss, who's that house was about maybe 2.5 blocks from my parents' house. So it was close enough where I could bring my laundry back, but it was, far enough to where I didn't have them looking over my shoulder. And my boss, who owned the house, he was always gone or working, so I felt like we had the place ourselves. So this particular day, it was a Sunday, and I was working, and I had there were two of my friends that were waiting at my house for me to get off work, and then we're going to go out and do something. Well, they, hanging out. They got bored. So they started snooping around and found this Ouija board in my bedroom. And this is one of those towns that, again, it's not only a small farming conservative town. Like, you knew everyone. You knew all the houses. It was that small. And so you can imagine the type of stores that they have in that. So this was it was a local variety store. I found it in the game section. I'd heard the stories, and I'm like, I'm gonna get that, because there's no way I believed it. The age limit, and the age limit is still now is 8 years and up, which is just bizarre to me. It's strange. But so, and I think that's why people think that it's a game. It's like, I'm an adult, what can an 8-year-old game, or an 8-year-old games, do to me, but so I thought the same. So I was at work, and I get this, I can't think of the word. Frantic doesn't even come close. They were, I could tell, are terrified. And they had said that they had got bored. They found, the Ouija board in my room and decided to play it. They thought it was a game. They didn't believe it. And they told me about their experience, about what happened. And of course, I didn't believe it, but it was and it's all in the book. I wrote that experience is that I wrote. The character's name in the book is Nathan and Jason. The experience that I wrote in that book is the experience that these guys told me about. And their experience scared them so much that they told me that they burned the board in a garbage can in the backyard.
Wow.
So I got home. The reason I didn't get back is I ended up working a double shift. And by the time I got back, it was midnight, and I smelled the lighter fluid. I saw the ash in the bottom of the garbage can. The garbage can was up next to the house, which was a white house, and there were smoke marks going all the way up to the eaves of the house. So it had to have been just a huge fire. And so I think I was more annoyed that, not that they had burned it, but that they got to play it before I did. And like that ticked me off more than anything. But I went to bed, got up the next morning to go to school, because even though I was, I had moved out of my house, out of my parents' house when I was 16, I'm still going to finish school. And when I stepped out the back door, I noticed there was no scent of lighter fluid in the air. Zero. And lighter fluid, that lingers for a while.
Right.
So it was nothing. There was no ash in the bottom of the garbage can. It was clean. There was no smoke marks on the side of the house. And I thought, there's no way that, because I didn't get home until midnight, and it was 7 o'clock when I was getting up and getting ready, or walking out the door to go to school. There was no way that they could have cleaned that up, because my bedroom was on the other side. This is an old metal beat up garbage can. And they would have had to vacuum it, and I would have heard it.
Yeah, or you would have known it would have rained to wash some of the smoke marks off the house and things like that. Yeah. Right,
but the thing that I've told the story thousands of times. I'll be 50, 55 in a couple of months. This happened when I was 16, and I still
get goosebumps.
It brings me back. But the weirdest part, the strangest part, is sitting on top of the garbage can was a brand new board.
Wow. That's
brand
like something you see in movies, you know, like they always try to get rid of the possessed doll or the board game or something, like then it always shows up again. Like that's crazy.
like Annabelle or
Yeah, Annabelle, The Conjuring, the new one has
Yeah.
a mirror that shows up again. So you're saying you walked out there and there was a brand new board game?
Yep, it was in its box, and my thought, I thought, oh, this is a great prank. I mean, I don't know how they
Right.
got this cleaned up. I'm like, in my head, this is my game. They didn't burn it. They had burned something else, to get the ash, and I'm like, this, but I don't know how they got it cleaned up, But I thought this is a really good prank. So I was going to school. I went and just threw the board in my room and on my bed. And when I got to school, I saw them in the hall. And I started walking toward them. And all I got out of my mouth was, hey, you guys, I don't know how you did it, but that was a great. And they turned around and saw me. I was going to say it's a great prank. I mean, it was amazing. They turned around and saw me, and they immediately like, hey, you stay away from us. We don't want anything to do with you. And they turn around and started walking away. And walking away fast. And I'm like, I remember thinking I'm giving them praise. I'm giving them, credit for doing an amazing prank. But I was confused, and I turned around, and there were two other of my friends there who happened to be, they were fraternal brothers or fraternal twins. They lived 2 doors down from me. And they saw what happened, and they're like, what's up with that? I'm like, I don't know. So I kind of gave them the bullet points. And so in the book, these two brothers are Darcy and Trent. Okay. So it's a brother and sister, and they live 2 doors down. So I'll refer to them that way. So okay. I was telling them, and they're like, well, Darcy said, I want to play it. I'm like, so do I. Let's do it on Sunday. I'm off work on Sunday. So, that following Sunday they came over, and we, pulled the board out and, put it on the table, and I was the scribe. The two of them are the ones that had the fingers on the planchette, and I was just writing down everything that the board, the letters the board were saying, and what it was spelling out. Okay. But all three of us were asking questions. As soon as we sat down and put the board out, Trent said, is anyone here? And it started moving around and went to yes. And he said, what's your name? And it said Peter. So basically, the entity that we were talking to, or the spirit we were talking to, said that he said it was a 16-year-old boy named Peter, and he had died in a car accident. However, it wasn't an accident. Mm. So exactly, that's exactly what we did. We're like, this is interesting.
I'm like adjusting myself in my seat,
Yeah, this is better. It gets so much better. So, so immediately we thought, all right, I think he's been murdered. If it's not an accident, what's the alternative? What's the option? Right. So. We kept asking questions, and after that he was done talking about. He was done answering questions, and he immediately spelled out, "You have to help my sister." And we asked, well, what's going on with her sister? And he said, her name is Chastity, and she is bound and gagged, and she has been kidnapped. She's in an old boarded up house, and the kidnapper is going to kill her and then burn the house down.
Wow. What a thing to put on someone, like
right. At 16.
Yeah.
We're still going through puberty, and we're all of a sudden, we're expected to be the Hardy Boys,
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
But I'm like, so they moved to town. Mm-hmm. I grew up, I was born and raised in that town. They moved in later, but so I knew everything. And I'm like, there is no boarded up towns. I mean, it was a dying town. It was, but there's no boarded up houses in town. It gave us an address, a specific address. And I thought, well, I know where that street is. Let's go over there. So we jumped in my car, and we drove over, and I'll be damned, there was a boarded up house there that I had never seen before.
Wow.
And it was sitting on a corner right across. So it was on a corner here, right here. And then there was, this road here, there was a potato field. It was bare. There wasn't any crops or anything, but it was a potato field right there. And so we thought, well, that's weird. Let's check it out. So we pulled the car. I mean, it was maybe a house down, but it was across the street next to the field. And we went through and we tried to, peek through the boards or tried to pull the boards off. We called out Chastity's name. Nothing. We could not see or hear anything. And what was weird about the house was it was clear that it hadn't been lived in years. I mean, that the back fence,
abandoned. Yeah,
absolutely. The weeds were big. There was a part of a wooden fence that had fallen over. On the back patio, there was an awning, and that was sagging. There was a big stack of tires over here. I mean, it was weird. It was obvious that it hadn't been used, but we didn't. We couldn't hear or see anything. So we went back to my house, and before we had a chance to ask a question, the planchette immediately started moving again, and it said, "You need to go back. She's there." Before we even asked a question, I thought, all right, well, this is weird. And right. Like every time that people use the board, the brothers, or Darcy and Trent, I think maybe once they accused the other of moving it, but they had such a trust between the two of them that if one said, "I'm not moving it," and then he knew that the other one knew he's not moving it, they never asked a question again because they were not pushing it. It was moving on. So, but the other thing that was weird was every time I asked a question or every time Darcy asked a question, there would be no movement, no activity. And I thought, all right, it's me because I don't have my fingers on the planchette, but Darcy had her fingers on the planchette and it wouldn't move. Only when Trent asked the question did it move. Trent would repeat our question and it would move. Wow. There's one time Darcy asked her question and it didn't move. And so she rephrased it and asked it again and it didn't move. So Trent asked the same question and it started moving. And we thought that was weird, that it was only responding to him. And that, but you didn't think much about it, until later. So this whole process or experience lasted 12 hours, over 12 hours. And finally, in the last time that we went to the house, and I grew up being a Boy Scout, so I'm like, all right, got a plan. You're going to go listen for sounds. You're going to go see if there's any light or movement inside. I was a Boy Scout, went camping and hiking and backpacking, so I'm going to look and see if I can find any tracks that are leading into or out the house that hopefully weren't ours. So again, nothing. So we went back to, and throughout the night, we had gone back and forth quite a few times. We kept going. After we went back to the board, we're like, oh, we're done. And Peter would convince us to go back again.
How far was this house away from where you lived?
It was kind of the other side of town, but literally to get from one side of the town, the other was about 2.5 miles. Okay. It was pretty close. So Trent was frustrated, and he's like, "This is BS. This is not true." He's like, we'd been up literally all night long. It was already it was getting close to 8 o'clock on Monday morning, and we already decided we're not going to school today.
Right.
So Trent was getting frustrated. He was tired. He's like, this is BS. He's like, this isn't true. And the planchette, and he said, it's your sister's not true, and you wasted our time, and we're not playing this anymore. And the planchette started moving more aggressively, and it moved around like it was so aggressive. It almost went off the table at one point. It was
Wow.
It was like it was angry, and
their hands were still on it. Their hands were on. Yeah.
I mean, literally, it was moving, and then.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden it slowed down. I still remember what it looked like. It slowed down, and it spelled out his name. It said, Trent, if you don't help my sister, you will die the same way I died.
Wow.
Wonky Times will be right back after this short commercial break.
I like to do it on the couch.
I like to do it with my husband.
Heck, sometimes I do it when no one's looking. Anywhere works for me. Introducing the Wonky Times Hotline. It's so much fun. You can do it anywhere.
No way.
Yes, anywhere. Your couch, your car, your backyard. Call us, leave a voicemail, and maybe you'll hear your message on the next podcast episode. Dial 615-669-8240. Strange stories, spooky tales, and all things wonky just waiting for your voice. Again, that's 615-669-8240. Don't wait, get wonky today.
At that point, we thought, all right, joke or not, this just got real.
Right.
And we are in way over our head. We don't know what we're doing. I suggested we go to the sheriff, and they talked me out of it. And so then we thought, all right, they're like, he's not going to believe us. And so we thought, all right, let's see if we can corroborate Peter's story. So we went to the local newspaper, and they had their this is going to date me, but they had their microfiche room. And so we told them that we were on a school project, and they let us go in this room for 2 hours, and we looked for at least 2 years before in all the obituaries to see if we could find an obituary for a 16-year-old boy named Peter who died in a car accident. And there was nothing. So at that point, Darcy and I were like, whew, it's fake. We don't need to worry about it. And, we were just relieved, and we're kind of jovial and glad it's over. And the whole time, Trent, who is normally not quiet, he laughs and jokes, or he laughed and joked, and he was on the football team. He was a big guy. And he kind of said, it was more to himself, I think, but it was loud enough for us to hear. And he said, we didn't ask him if he died here. And I thought, wow, you're right, because if he didn't die in that town, it wouldn't be in that newspaper. And so at that point, we're like, all right, we don't have a choice. We have to go to the sheriff. So we went to the sheriff, and at one point during the middle of the night, when we were at the house and we were trying to rescue or help Chastity in some way, I looked down and I saw these headlights that were coming down the road to the corner where the house was. And the closer that it got to the house, the more it slowed down. And I didn't know if, in my head, the first thing that popped into my head is it's neighbors. They saw, some kids out here on a Sunday night. They think we're vandalizing the house, and they're coming to check on it. But as the car got closer, it stopped. He stopped before he got to that stop sign. And as I could see him slow down, I turn around, I'm like, duck, hide. And, one of them, Darcy ducked behind that big pile of tires. Trent dove behind that piece of wooden fence that had fallen over, and I just dropped where I was because the weeds were pretty high. Mm-hmm. But when I dropped, I noticed that I was right next to a dollhouse. It was almost like those Barbie houses are like 2 stories, and
pretty big,
it was like. Yeah, it was a big one, but I noticed, when I was hiding, I was like right next to it, and I noticed that it almost looked handmade, but right above the door going into it, it was clear that someone had painted the initials CB.
Okay.
And
Chastity.
I did not get it. It didn't even cross my mind. I was the closest to the car. I mean, I was literally maybe about 12 to 15 feet away. I couldn't see who it was, but I could see the silhouette of a man, and he had big stature, and I could tell that he was scouring the yard, and I'm like, he's looking for us. He saw some movement, and he's definitely looking for us. And the other thing I noticed was my dad smoked at the time, and I could see a little orange thing. So I knew that he was smoking in there. And we just hid. And eventually, he took off and, turned left from the stop sign and left. And as soon as he got far enough, we ran back. And one of my friends said, you know what, we need to stop doing that, because what if he was the killer? Mm-hmm. And he follows us back and he kills our family and friends and us. And I mean, all these things were going through our head. Right. So by the time we went to the sheriff, we walked in, and
it's like, how do you begin to explain to a sheriff? Yeah.
You're exactly right. I mean, we're 16. We're clearly skipping school. We're telling the sheriff of this little town, who is one of the most respected people in town, that there is a kidnapped girl. Then the kidnapper is going to kill her and burn the house down. And the reason that we found out about it is her dead brother told us. Who's going to believe that? Yeah. So we walked in, and there was a lady that was the kind of like the receptionist, I guess you could say.
Up front,
Yeah, and she's like, what do you want? Why aren't you in school? And again, everyone knew everyone. They knew my parents. The sheriff lived about a block and a half from my parents, a block and a half, 2 blocks, and knew my parents well. And so we've convinced her. I'm like, look, we've got something to tell the sheriff. It's really serious, and we don't have time to sit and talk about it. And she was almost like, you know what? It's not worth my time. We're dead. Mm-hmm. There's nothing going on. So she took us back. And when she opened the door to the sheriff's office, he was putting a cigarette down and it was snubbing it out in the little ashtray there. And we told him that we believed that there was a young girl who has been kidnapped, and in trouble. We did not tell him that the house was that the killer was going to burn the house down. We just said there's this girl, and it's basically what we knew. Mm-hmm. And it didn't hit me until later when I was writing the book, and I realized I started going through everything. And I mean, you can see I've been told this story thousands of times. I still get goosebumps. So it brings me right back. That's how traumatic it was. Mm-hmm. Probably right back to that experience. And later on, I remember the sheriff didn't look surprised. He didn't look alarmed. And if, in my mind, if you're a sheriff in a small town, and regardless of who tells you that there's a kidnapped girl and she has potential of being murdered, you're going to go check that out. You're going to be alarmed.
Right.
And
that's like stuff that they not look forward to, but that's like what they're trained to go investigate, things like that,
Exactly. And he was so respected. He'd been elected sheriff. He was the only sheriff. I lived there from when I was born until I literally left the day after I graduated high school. I always said the best way to look at that town is through the rearview mirror of your car. And the morning after I graduated high school, I left. But he's the only sheriff that I remember. That's how well respected he was. But years later, when I was writing the book, I remembered how he just didn't seem surprised at all. Mm-hmm. And he said, he's like, "And how do you know that this is true?" And we're like, "Okay. So you're going to think this is weird."
Right.
But her brother told us, and he said, "And where's her brother? And who is he?" Because small town, he thought, well, maybe I know his parents. And we said, "All right, it's weird, but this is true.
You're never going to believe us." Yeah.
Right, exactly. His name is Peter, and he's dead. And at that point, the sheriff, his personality changed. He wanted to end that conversation as fast as possible. And he didn't even respond. He said, "Scott," because I knew my parents, and he said, "Scott, if you don't go to school, I'm going to take you in my cruiser myself, and then I'm going to call your dad, and your dad's going to beat your ass," which is definitely true. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, forget it. So we left. But it wasn't until years later that, again, when I was writing this book, that I remembered everything. It's like when traumatic things happen, they come back in stages and things. And when I'm going back, trying to remember everything that happened in chronological order, things just started popping back in. And one of the things that did was his reaction when we mentioned about Chastity. I don't even think we said her name. We just said a girl, but he didn't seem alarmed or surprised. Right. The next thing is when we said Peter's name and that he was dead, he immediately just changed personalities like that. He's like, "All right, you need to get out of my office now." I thought that was odd. Didn't have an explanation, but I thought it was odd. So we graduated. 10 years later, we come back, or I come back to visit my family, and my mom was one of those ladies, those mothers that she saved all of the Mother's Day cards that I made in first and second grade, third grade.
Yeah, that's how my mom is too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's kind of funny to go back and look at those,
Yeah, look at your handwriting and your drawings or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. Well, some of the other things that she saved was all of the stories that I wrote starting when I was in second grade,
oh, cool.
8, 9. They're actually on my website. I put them on the website. And what's funny about that is when I was reading them after all these years and to put them on the website, I thought, if someone didn't know that an 8-year-old Mormon boy wrote this, they would think that somebody on acid wrote it, because they're so bizarre and out there, and they're separate short stories. And I think that's where I got my love of writing. But I got to the bottom of the drawer, and I noticed that, there was a pull the drawer. I noticed that there was a stack of papers stuck underneath the drawer. And it's almost like, when you pull the drawer out and you put a stack of papers in there and push the drawer in, like you're hiding it, that no one will ever find it. But throughout the years, people opened a drawer, closing that door, it kind of worked its way out. So I pulled the drawer out and got it. And it was the notes that I found, or that I made during this experience.
Wow.
And I'm retentive and militant when it comes to the details like that. I had the date on it. I had how we were feeling. I had exactly what it said, what the question was. The question was asked. And so I read through the entire stack of notes. It's about the size of of a Post-it stapled together. And I got to the end. I chills, the hair in the back of my neck stood up. And then I remembered that I had heard that Darcy and Trent were in town visiting their parents as well. So, I drove over to their house, and Darcy answers the door, and, we catch up, for a few minutes. And I said, "Well, where's Trent?" I said, I leave town. I have to go home tomorrow. Where's Trent? I'd love to see him. And she said, you didn't hear. And I said, "No, hear what?"
Oh boy, what a cliffhanger, right?
Matt, why did you stop the interview?
Because we're out of time for the week.
Who is telling you you're out of time?
Well, I'm just stopping it because it creates excitement, Brian. And, now folks are on the edge of their seats. They can't wait for next week's episode.
Okay, I see. And you managed to find another opportunity to play that clip.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Wonky Times. Thanks for wandering down the weird and wonky avenues with me. And remember, stay curious, question the ordinary, and if you see something strange in your backyard, email us at getwonky@wonkytimes.com.
Also, give us a call at 615-669-8240. Leave us a voicemail, and it is likely we will include it in an episode.
Adios!